So next we're going to be looking at iteration, and to iterate means to count or repeat things. The main ways we do this in Python or in programming in general is by using for loops and while loops. Let's go back and look at variables, and let's look at lists again. So let's do a list of names. So names equal, let's do that. Let me open my list program and copy this because I am lazy. Let's put that there. Oh, I forgot one thing actually. Let's do my comments at the top. Always a good idea to do comments. And this is going to be, what's this again? This is for loops, basic for loops. Let's do basic for loops. And let's say this is on the 12th of the 11th, 2022. And this is going to be by King Boss, aka runs Tech Hub. That's it. How do we do a for loop? The simplest way. Let's look at something first. Let's print names. Make sure this works. Print names. Press F5. We get this nice list with the brackets and commas, and I was like, that's a bit messy. I don't want to see it like that. What a for loop does, or what we can do with a for loop, we can say for every item in this list, for each item in the list, for each student in the classroom, tell me the student's full name. For each item in this list called names, tell me the name of each person or of each thing. So a for loop is written like this for this specific example: for item in names. Now the variable, this is called a temporary variable, is created just for the purpose of this for loop, and it's called item. I could call this anything: for chickens in names, for beef in names, for a in names. Most people actually, when doing this, they say for I in names. I don't like that option because it's not very clear as to what's being done if you don't know how to program. So this is how most experienced programmers do it, but I like to do for items in names. So this tells me for every item I have in names, this is called names here. This variable, this list is called names. For every item, so item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4. For every item in names, I'm going to print item. And again, this is a temporary variable that we use only for the purpose of the for loop. So when I run this now, it should print runs Tech Hub on one line, Tech Jamo on another line, Remo 2 hands on another line, IGN on another line. So this is how we do a for loop. We tell it when to stop already without telling it when to stop, which is a bit weird, because we say for items in names. How many items are there in names? Item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4. So we tell it already, do this thing 4 times because we have 4 items. So if I added 1 million more items, so let's say I did A, I did B, it would do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Oh, B 6 times. That's how many times it would do it. So let me get rid of this, and I'm going to run this program, and I'm going to print each of these items. So press F5. And as you can see, this is the original print and this is the new print. I like this one a bit more because it gives us a much nicer, easier way to read things. This is how we do a basic, super basic for loop in Python to print out the amount of things we have. Now we can do another one. So I can say something like this: for item, or so for numbers in range, range, and again, remember, this numbers is a temporary variable that the for loop will use to do the things X amount of times. For numbers in range, let's just say 10, right? Print, I'm going to put numbers. What it's going to do is going to print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's what we should get. This is a nice, quick, easy one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, as you can see, it doesn't get to 10. And you might be wondering, why? Because remember, Python starts counting from 0. So if you have a range of numbers which you want to print, let's say 100, and you want it to actually print the 100, you can do 101. That's one way to do it. And it will print the 100. So you always go one above what you need, or you can tell it the range. So you could say from 0 to 101. And if I print that, F5, it goes up to 100 again. So this is the same thing as saying just 100. Now, there are a lot more conditions that we can put in range, but I don't want to focus on range now. I want to focus on the for loop. So I'm going to leave this alone and put it back 10. And again, very, very basic for loop. For items in names, this is names, and these are the items within names. For every single item in name, print the item. And I've also gone and said for numbers in range 10, so from 0 to 9, print the numbers. The next thing I'm going to show you guys is how to print the location of each thing in my list. So let me move this down a bit, and what I'm going to say here is print each item and print the location of each item as well, right? So I've got my items being printed here. Let me comment this part out. I don't want to see this just yet, so let me right click, so highlight everything, right click and go to comment out, or you can press alt number 3 on the keyboard. So alt and number 3, that's going to comment everything out, so I can then work with sections I know work and move this down, and I can look at that later on, right? So how do I do this? Again, I need to print each item, and then I need to also print the location of the item. So I know for a fact runs tech hub location 1, tech jamo location 1. I know for a fact that runs tech hub is location 0, because again Python starts from 0, tech jamo location 1, remo 2 hands location 2, and ign location 3. So that's what I should get when I finally get my values out. So to do this, you create a temporary variable or a counter variable. Now I typically just call this counter, and I initiate the value to be equal to 0. So I create the variable with the name counter, and I tell it to be equal to 0, because I know for a fact that the very first thing on my list starts at value number 0. Now I can make this any number I want. It doesn't really matter which number it is. I can make it the number I want. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to print as well as the items. So let me run this program now to see what it does. It prints out everything. It prints runs tech hub first, tech jamo, remo 2 hands, and ign. But what I can also do, I can print the location of each item. So a couple ways we can do this. This is the way I'm going to show. I think this might be the simplest way. So just before we do the print for items, I'm going to say something like print location. So print open close, and I'm going to say location here. I'm going to put a comma outside of the quotes, and I'm going to put counter there, because again counter starts at 0, and the very first thing on my list starts at 0. Then the next thing is 1, then 2, then 3. So what I'm going to say is for each item in the list, print the counter, so the location value, and also print the item. So after where I say counter, the next thing I'm going to do after items, because here I'm printing just location and just my item, nothing special, right? The next thing I need to do is to increment. So to count my variable called counter, increase the value by 1 each time. Couple ways we can do this. Some people do this counter equals +1. I don't like that way because it's not very readable. Someone who's programming for the very first time won't see this and understand exactly what it means. I think this is a much better way. Counter equals counter +1. So I come back and I use the same counter value, and I just say add 1 to whatever it was before. So let's just say for argument's sake, counter here got to 100. If I say counter equals counter +1, it's going to look for the previous value of counter, which in this case is 100, and it will add 1 to it. And then counter becomes 101. It's going to look for the counter value, which is 101, add 1 to it, 102, 103, 104, and just keep doing that until the for loop ends. In our case, the for loop is only going to run the amount of times based on the amount of elements we have inside the for loop. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So 0 to 3. That's how many times it should run. So what should happen here is going to print location, and it's going to print 0 first. Then it's going to print items. The first item is runs tech hub. So runs tech hub is at location 0. Then it's going to go back around the loop. It's going to print tech jamo location 1. Go back around the loop. Remo 2 hands location 2. Go back around the loop. IGN location 3. That's what should happen. So I'm going to press run on my keyboard now. So F5. Okay, it's a bit messy. So let me put a new line character in so it's a bit easier to read. So let me press F5 again. And there we go. Location 0 runs tech hub. Location 1 tech jamo. Location 2 remo 2 hands. Location 3 IGN. This is not something that needs to be done with for loops, but it's just a nicer way of writing things to make it easier to look at, let's say. I'm going to put a comma here after counter. I'm going to put some quotes. I'm going to put another comma, and I'm going to put items here. So I'm not going to tell you what this is going to do, but you guys hopefully can try and figure it out. I'm just going to put the text in here. So I'm going to call this actual item, put my colon there, and remove this. Now, before I run this program, hopefully pause the video and think about what you think this program is actually going to do. So again, I've said counter equals 0 for items in names, and names is the name of my list because I've put names in there, right? Names of YouTube channels, let's say. I put print location, put the counter, actual item, put items, and I've said counter equals counter plus 1. If you were paying attention to the last program and you understood that one relatively well, you should hopefully get this one. So 3, 2, 1, and I'm going to press F5 now to see if it works. Here, there we go. So we have location 0 and we have actual item runs tech hub. Location 1, actual item tech jamo. Location 2, actual item Remo 2 hands. Location 3, actual item IGN. So this is how we get everything on one nice line looking pretty, and we haven't wasted a print statement. Now, for most of us, this is perfectly fine having multiple print statements. However, if you're using something like the Raspberry Pi Pico, which is a very, very fast microcontroller, however, if your application is supposed to be time constrained, you don't want to be using functions again and again and again if you can reduce it. So this is semi-optimized, let's say, because having one print function do the job instead of having two print functions do it, theoretically speaking, it should be twice as fast. But in practice, it's not always going to be twice as fast. So thank you guys for watching. Hopefully that for loop stuff made sense. This is not the extent of for loops. This is a very, 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 very basic video on for loops. So next we have while loops.